Going to be rebuilding a Holley 4150 vacuum secondary carb today. And in this rebuild, we're using a Summit kit. And we're going to try one of these Percy's Adjust-A-Jets. And we're going to be adding some power valve blowout protection. This video is not meant to be a how-to video. I'm no expert. If you're going to do anything on your own, do your own research and know what you're doing. So you can see I have my carb on a stand here. Makes it easier for me to work on it, and I can operate the linkage. The first thing I'm going to do here is identify what type of carb this is. On the metering block here is a 3310-1. Here's a 750 double pumper, and this one's listing as a 4778-2. And you can see that's on the metering block as well. I have a couple Holley books here as reference material, and this one actually has a good chart in the back. So here's a 3310-1, started life as a 4150, and it's a 780 CFM carb. Having an idea of what I'm working on helped me order the kit for this, and sometimes in the past I've had to order multiple kits to be able to rebuild one of these. And the reason that air horn was ground off of here is to try to straighten out the airflow. Now it looks quite a bit like this HP carb on the cover of this book here. There used to be a hole in the top of this carb that would work the choke plate. You can see that that's been filled in with epoxy since it's no longer needed. That way all the air has to run through the air cleaner. I'm going to start this rebuild by taking the primary float bowl and metering block off. You can see that metering block has a vacuum port in it. The secondary side does not have a vacuum port. This is simply done by undoing these 4 screws here. This carb was recently apart, so it's going to come right apart. Sometimes you might have to pry a little bit to get it apart, and you don't want to pry somewhere where it's going to damage a sealing surface. If your bowl were full of gas and you're taking this off for whatever reason, say change the jets, you could take this bottom screw out and drain your bowl that way. Now when I reassemble this, I'll keep this metering block on the primary side. A note to anyone who's thinking about getting these clear sight plugs, I don't really like them. A lot of times they get cloudy, you can't see through them, and if you take them out to try to adjust the float level, they swell up and the threads come off, you can't get them back in. Now I'm going to take the secondary bowl and metering block out in the same way. There's a lot of theory in these carbs. I'm not going to touch on too much of it. We are going to touch on a couple small points though. And I was actually told that this carb was leaking gas after it was put together, so I'll be watching for incorrect gaskets and things of that sort. I'm going to remove the vacuum diaphragm now. Looks like there's 2 screws here, a screw down there, and a C-clip. Here's the gasket that fed that. Here's the accelerator pump nozzle, sometimes called the squirter. You can see there's only one on this vacuum secondary carb because there's only one accelerator pump. And we'll take that out. There's a gasket under the screw, and there should be a gasket on the bottom side. Inside here should be a needle valve. Now I'm going to separate the main body from the base plate. There'll be a bunch of screws underneath there. Not all carbs have all the screws. Here's a look at that 750 double pumper. You see it doesn't have some. If those holes are threaded and tapped, I'll probably add them when I redo this carb. Before I completely remove the plate, I was going to show you why we're putting in the power valve blowout protection. Basically, the power valve sits in this chamber here, and manifold vacuum gets into this chamber and actuates this. If there's a backfire, this chamber can actually get pressurized and blow out the power valve if there's no power valve blowout protection. So here's a hole that the manifold vacuum goes through, and you can basically see there's no restriction to this chamber. So we'll have to add that. And this carb actually does have 2 power valves. And this isn't going through, but the secondary side doesn't have any protection either. All the screws are out, and the main body is stuck to the base plate, so I have to prying that a little bit to get it off. I'll be saving all the old gaskets to help pick out the new ones. Here's the base plate. There's no need to take it down any farther. I'm just going to clean it up as it is and then get it ready for reassembly. Got to be real careful when you're cleaning it that you don't mess up any of these sealing surfaces. So I don't really want to use a scraper. I'm going to spray it down with carb cleaner and see if I can just get this gasket material off. On this base plate is a cam for the accelerator pump. And these can be installed in 2 different positions. And that's a tuning item. When I'm cleaning this, and this goes for the rest of the carb as well, I'll be spraying carb cleaner through all these passages and blowing it out with compressed air. And if anything's clogged, I might use a fine wire to unclog it. And I've seen that many times in the metering blocks. Actually using a plastic tool on the stubborn stuff. Here's the base plate as clean as I'm going to get it. Carburetor cleaner and compressed air blown through all the passages, including the PCV passage and the vacuum passage. And I noticed that this primary throttle shaft has some play in it. Should probably be rebushed or replaced. I'm going to put this power valve protector in. This is a Mr. Gasket one. There are a couple different variations. That little thing there you see is basically a one-way check valve. And I could probably put this in the main body or the base plate. And I've decided to go ahead and just put it in the base plate. I'll be drilling through here and here, but not all the way through, because I want to leave a lip of aluminum in this base plate, so there's no way that this check valve can get sucked into the engine. I'm on the Buffalo drill press here. I'm going to drill this base plate through from the top side. And it's not going to leave a whole lot of meat there, but I think it's going to work. Again, I'm not going to go all the way through because I don't want there to be any possibility of that thing getting sucked into the engine. Quite a bit more material over here. Here's a close-up look at my holes. You can see that aluminum lip down there. There's no way that this thing can get sucked into the engine. The drill bit they gave me was kind of big, and it just drops right in there. It doesn't really matter though, because the holes in the main body are smaller than that, so that piece will be locked in there. This back one's in there just a hair bit deeper. Probably don't have to do this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and stake it with an awl. Here's a look at that power valve protector from the bottom side. I'm outside now, got my safety glasses on, and I'll be spraying carb cleaner through every single hole in this carb from both directions. And I'll be watching for any sort of obstruction, and I'll be blowing compressed air through afterwards. So my main body is cleaned out as good as I'm going to get it. It's actually not sitting on the bottom. There's a couple of ridges there. And I actually went ahead and staked this other power valve protector as well. And then I picked out the gasket from the kit that matched the one on the carb. Made sure it's not going to block any holes on the base plate or the main body. And it's a universal kit. There's actually quite a few gaskets to pick from. But that is the one I've selected. I'm going to spray some heavy-duty silicone spray on all my gaskets from this point forward on both sides so they don't stick. And that's in order to help prevent gasket situations like this. You want to keep this away from any kind of painting. You wouldn't even want to spray it in the same building. This is particularly critical on the bowl gaskets. Those things really like to stick. Here's the gasket in place on the pins, and I'll put the main body on in the right direction. And I'll land it with these screws. I'll go in a crisscross pattern and evenly tighten them up. Here my screws are all landed and torqued evenly. I'm going to turn my attention now to the secondary metering block and bowl. Basically, take it apart, save your gaskets, and get her all cleaned up. This one's got some jet extensions on the secondary side. Taking these extensions out. I have a Moroso jet tool here to take the jets out with. And these jets can be changed for tuning purposes. Here I got a 1-inch wrench. We're going to take the power valve out. Looks like he had the wrong gasket in there. This carburetor's barely running. It actually has a lot of crud in it. So all these passages in this are going to have to be cleaned up just like the main body. Carb cleaner through them all, blow air through them all, and then hit it with a wire if there's any sort of restrictions. This thing here is a power valve tester. Definitely worth its weight in gold. Basically what you do is just screw your power valve in here. Screw the cap on. Hook up your vacuum pump. And see if she holds a vacuum. This power valve is holding a vacuum, so it was good. And I like to check all power valves before I put them in carbs. Probably can't see it, but this power valve has a 6 and a 5 on it. So at 6.5 or less, the spring will actually overcome the vacuum and it will allow fuel to flow through it. This is a tuning item and can be changed. You could also get rid of the power valve. You could put a plug in and then go up with your jet sizing. Here's a look at the secondary float bowl. This one had those paper gaskets in it for the bowl screws. Those things are pretty problematic. You can see this one here is ripping apart. Those will be replaced with the nylon bowl screw gaskets. You can take the bowl off and on a bunch of times and be able to reuse these gaskets. These ones here you might get away with a couple times, but then they're going to rip and fail and you'll be leaking fuel out of there. Here's the bowl. I'm going to take the jam nut off the needle and seat assembly, and I'll back out that needle and seat. The float's held in by these two screws. I'll get those out of there. And I'll take that sight plug out and get this nice and clean. You can see that this one has no provision for a accelerator pump. It's not drilled. Here's the float. Sometimes these become filled with gas. And see there's actually a spring assembly on here. I'm just going to reuse this float. Hopefully it doesn't have any leaks in it. Alright, I've got everything cleaned up as good as I'm going to get it. And got the jets back in, the extensions back in. And now I'm getting ready to put the power valve back in. And got to make sure you got the correct gasket there. See, this one actually goes around the outside, unlike what was on there. I guess there's an older type power valve too that has a tab washer, and you don't want to get that one mixed up either. A little silicone on there. This power valve's been checked. We have the gasket centered on it, and go ahead and thread it in there. I'm making sure that my gasket is still centered. And then I'll just snug it up with that 1-inch wrench. Probably can't tell in video, but this thing's practically smooth. These sealing beads have really taken a beating. Hopefully she seals up. I'm going to screw in the needle and seat assembly now. I'm going to put a dab of Vaseline on the O-ring. Here I'm holding the float bowl upside down. I'm just going to screw it in until this float's about level. This is just an initial adjustment to get it running, and we'll set it on the car using the sight plug. To lock it in place, we'll be putting a large washer on it, the nut, the small washer, and then a screw. This nut's just used for turning it. And then it's locked in place now, so the adjustment can't change. I've selected my gaskets using the old gaskets and checking them against the holes on the carb, and you can see that this one only goes on one direction. Got my nylon washer in there. I'm going to go ahead and get this set up on the carb. There are alignment pins on that metering block. And I'll torque all these bowl screws down evenly. I'm going to put the sight plug and gasket in now. I'm working on the primary side now. I got my squirter cleaned up. The kit came with a new needle valve, so I'll drop that in there. I put a gasket in place, the squirter, and then the screw and gasket. Actually reusing an old gasket on the screw because I didn't see one on the kit that would work for this. I'm going to work on the primary metering block and float bowl. This float bowl is actually getting replaced. This is off a carb I bought a while ago. And it's basically going to be the same setup as the back, except this primary side has an accelerator pump. We'll also be putting the Percy's adjust-a-jet on the primary side of this carb. You can see that this metering block here has a vent extension installed. So here's a new float bowl. You can see it's a center hung float bowl, and actually both sides are drilled and tapped and go through, so I'll have to plug the side I'm not going to use. And there is a lot of casting flash on this. You can see some of that. So I'll knock that off and get this set up. I'm just going to take a blunt screwdriver and work off any of the casting flash I find on this. Here I'm taking the accelerator pump apart. There's a diaphragm in there and a spring. This is one type of one-way check ball, but the new type uses an umbrella like this. And I'll put that in now. The problem with this float bowl here is these threads were stripped out and weren't able to get that diaphragm to seal up. I've sometimes found larger accelerator pumps. I believe this one here is 50 cc's per 10 strokes. Sometimes people put that on for radical applications. But this is the correct diaphragm for this accelerator pump. So I'll put the spring in here, the diaphragm, and the lever. We'll get that screwed down. I put the rest of this float together. This one has a plastic float. Should be fine. And I've cleaned up the metering block as best I could. I have the power valve installed. And the only real difference between the primary and secondary metering block and this carb is it's a 2-corner idle, so it has 2 idle mixture screws in it, whereas the back didn't have any. And for that, I'm basically just going to be putting a cork gasket in both sides, and I'll be screwing in a new mixture screw. I'm going to go all the way in with it. I'm going to back it out 1.5 turns, just as a starting point. Here are the idle mixture screws all the way in. 1/2, 1, 1.5. Now at this point I could put it all back together just like the secondary side, But the owner wanted to try this Percy's Adjust-A-Jet, and this thing's made in the USA and it's actually plastic. A little surprised at that. Apparently you can externally adjust the jetting by turning this screw. The first thing the kit says to do there is get rid of this vent extension. So we'll have to pry this rivet up and get that out of there. The rivet's been pried up, the extension removed, and then the rivet was tapped back down into place. I may put a little epoxy over this. Since we're going to be adding this extension onto the carb, I'm going to have to change out the arm on the accelerator pump. I'll drive out this roll pin and replace the arm. Here's the new arm installed. Now I'm test fitting this thing, and if you can tell, but the center of this thing's warped, and it's actually moving the power valve around. Even with the gasket in place, it would still depress it. The power valve I took out of the carb was a little bit shorter, so I might try that one. The longer power valve has been removed and a shorter one installed, and with the gasket, looks like it just barely clears. In the instructions it says to actually file this little nub down on the power valve. So I'm going to go ahead and take that power valve out and do that. You can see the difference in length of the power valves after that was done. I even took a little bit of the spring seat off on this one for safe measure. With my power valve reinstalled, I'm going to go ahead and spray these gaskets down and put the package together on the carb. This kit comes with longer screws to accommodate for the new length of this thing. And we'll get her all torqued down evenly here. I'm actually going to crank this down pretty good because the Percy's thing is a little warped on the bottom there. We got a situation here with this screw and this accelerator pump lever. It's touching at idle, and all the way down this lever is bottomed out. It's supposed to be an additional like 20 thousandths of travel at wide open throttle. So I'm going to take this apart and see if I can get some adjustment there. I moved the cam to position 2, and in the idle position you can see they're just making contact. Now wide open, there's still a little travel there. I'm going to go ahead and replace the diaphragm for the vacuum secondary now. And you can see this one was fitted with the kit for the quick change spring. Basically you just take these 2 screws out. And you can change the spring that controls the actuation of the secondaries. Here I've taken the other 2 screws out, and there's the diaphragm. New one came in the Summit kit. Just got her set on there with the hole lined up, and I'll screw the top back on. I've stuck the spring back on this piece, and I'll get this thing landed. Now with the new cork gasket stuck on the body of the carburetor, I'll screw the vacuum diaphragm back on. Here I'm plugging that unused fuel inlet in that new bowl. There is one of those plastic washers on there. It's time to put the initial setting on this Percy's Adjust-A-Jet. This carb had some 72 jets in it. So according to their chart, it's going to be 2 1/8 turns counterclockwise. Probably can't see it, but I've put a scribe mark on here where this setting was initially. So 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2, and 1/8. A couple notes on this is the Summit rebuild kit was cheap and it was excellent. It had basically everything we needed here. The jury's kind of out on the Percy's job. I don't like it being plastic, and it was warped. I cranked it down. It looks like it's going to seal. I'm not sure. And I'm concerned if we have to take it apart, we're going to have to special order those gaskets. I suspect that this thing will eventually come back off of this carb, but we'll give it a chance and we'll see how it works. This carb will be going on a 1974 S3 Laguna, and I'll try to get some footage of when we're running it and if there's any problems with anything. That's about it for the big carb rebuild. Thanks for watching.